Ladies and gentlemen, please give a special welcome to the chair of today's summit, Doug VanDyke.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second annual Red Cross Disaster Preparedness Summit. For those of you who were here last year, you remember it was the day after the government shutdown. You really never can tell what disaster you're going to prepare for. And I know we've got Brad Kaiserman, our closing keynote from last year, back this year to do the opening keynote. And I'll introduce Brad a little bit later, but he was allowed to sit down today, which I think is the first time he sat down in several years. So he was pretty happy about that. Well, I'll get on with this. On behalf of the American Red Cross in the National Capital Region, thank you all for joining us today. I'm always impressed by the number of people who are willing to turn up at 8 a.m. in DC. So thank you again. My name's Doug VanDyke. I'm the CEO of Enquizit. I'm also this year's Disaster Preparedness Summit Chair. I've been on the board of the Red Cross Capital Region for 5 years now. I've been the annual chair to the Salute to Service Summit, and this year I am chairing this event. I love the Red Cross, and I have, in my roles at Enquizit and Amazon, I've supported dozens and dozens of nonprofits. I've given them my time, my money, technology, but there's only one nonprofit that I will literally lie down and let them suck the blood out of me, and that is the American Red Cross. And the reason I do this, though, is because I believe so passionately in the mission of the Red Cross. I've seen what Linda Mathis and the team do with those resources that they have at their disposal. It's easy to donate time, money, energy, and blood when you've seen them, when other people are running away from a disaster, the Red Cross runs at it. And they're there with blankets, they're there with blood, they're there with food, they're there to care for the people who have been affected by this disaster, and they don't leave until the disaster is over. And I know with the hurricanes that hit a few years ago, my guess is they probably still have a few people that they're sheltering. So I mean, it is not something that they respond to and they're done and out. They will stay with for years until the mission is completed. In my prior role at Amazon Web Services, I was responsible for managing our relationships at AWS with the US federal government and nonprofit organizations. And as part of this scope, I was asked to start a disaster response team for AWS. In fact, hi Maggie Carter. Maggie runs the disaster response team. Sorry to put you on the spot, Maggie. And I thought, so I had 25 years of experience working with the government, with the commercial and nonprofit sectors. I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I was prepared. And it wasn't until I was put in this position that I realized how little I actually knew about what preparedness meant. I think I confused it with prediction, like we're going to predict when the next hurricane's going to strike and we'll have our resources there. But the reality is you can prepare, you cannot predict for disasters. Otherwise, they wouldn't be disasters. So my guess is that many of you are here for the same reason that I was, and that is you want to learn more about how to prepare. And that's what we hope to accomplish today. The DC is especially in this complicated region where we have significant threats because we're the nation's capital. We have multiple jurisdictions, the Virginia State, Maryland State, DC, just the complexity. Now, I would say we're unique, and I'll probably use the word unique, but the reality is when you have a large, complex group of organizations that are responding together, it requires complex coordination across different organizations. And that's what I love about the number of people who have shown up here today, and that is meet the people who you're with. Because many of you, I was able to witness this wonderful reunion today, and it was a little bit exciting, a little bit depressing. They said, oh, I remember you. Yeah, we responded together for the Ebola crisis. And that's good news. That means you're the group that responds in this region when something bad occurs. And that's what we're hoping to build here. We're hoping to build a community that is prepared for the disasters, whatever shape they may take. So we can't cover everything in detail today, and we're not going to try to. But what our attempt is to do is to bring together some of the experts in this region and have an open conversation. And we're going to encourage questions from the audience. There's different ways that we're going to do that. I'll discuss them later. But before we dive into the details in this program, I am going to ask some people stand up for recognition. So first of all, I would like to have the members of the planning committee who helped me plan this event, please stand up. These poor souls spent the last 8 to 10 months. Thank you. They were trapped in a conference room with me, so that deserves an applause. So in addition to the impressive committee planning committee, grateful to have all of the presenters here today as well. We'll go over their bios in a little bit. But before that, I'd like to take a brief moment to thank emergency responders who are in the room as well. And you all keeping the nation's capital safe from harm includes CERT members, disaster action team members, emergency management, police, fire, many more. Would you please stand up for acknowledgement? Thank you. And I want to be sure to recognize all of the sponsors that made this event possible. Amazon Web Services, Emergent Biosolutions, Pepco, GTT Communications, Leidos, the J. Willard and Alice S. Marriott Foundation, QMT Wind Chimes, Avalon Bay Communities, Booz Allen Hamilton, KPMG, Deloitte, JP Morgan, Lockton Companies, Guidehouse, Enquizit, and Holland & Knight. Throughout the event, you will see these sponsors and community partners who are supporting the summit. You all made this event possible. Thank you. And during the breaks, I would ask, many of them have booths out in the auditorium. Please visit them and see why they are here supporting the Disaster Preparedness Summit. So one more thing before I turn it over to our first speaker, I want to highlight the emergency response guidelines for the buildings, for this building in particular. As we know, readiness and preparedness are absolutely important in every event and all facets of life. So there's two different types of alarms here in the building. The first is a fire alarm, and that will be an alarm, audible alarm, and visible strobes. And then there will be an announcement that gives instructions about how to leave the building, which exits are safe. There's a second type of alarm that's the shelter in place. These are strobes only, plus a voice will come on the intercom announcing, stay in place and follow those instructions. It's important, whatever the instructions are, that you stop, look, and listen and follow them, because running outside may not be your best alternative. So, now that we're through the formalities, let's get this program going. And I mentioned that we want to be sure that we hear from you during this program. So I'm going to give you a couple different ways to interact with our speakers. First, we are going to be doing a live Q&A. I'll be walking a microphone around during the Q&A sessions when the panelists are on. I'll have a couple people with me as well. But for those of you who are a little bit more shy, we have another alternative. We're going to have boxes and index cards available. If you have a question for anyone, write your question down, hand it to one of our Red Cross supporters who's here in the audience, and we will make sure to get those questions up. Maybe not every question, depending on how many we get, will be addressed, but those are the pool that we will be using for the questions for the panelists. And then for those of you who are feeling ambitious and technically savvy, we're going to give you a text number so you can text your question in as well. And I believe that text number is up there. Yep, 703-615-7538. Now I'd like to welcome one of our presenting sponsors to Tyler Anthony, the Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, to give remarks on behalf of Pepco. We're grateful to Pepco for their ongoing partnership for the Red Cross and generous funding to support the summit. You'll see videos from our other two presenting sponsors, Amazon Web Services and Emergent Biosolutions, later in the program. So with that, Tyler, come on up.
Well, welcome everybody. Good morning. Can the folks on that side, you guys getting some good noise over there? How about on this side? Everybody, get a shout out. Okay. Well, I want to just talk for 2 or 3 minutes and just on behalf of Pepco and Exelon, thank the Red Cross for allowing us to be here today. We're glad to be a sponsor here for the second year. Linda, and what Dick said is just of paramount importance to the role that I have as COO and the role that Pepco performs in this region. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. The background for Pepco when it comes to an emergent event, there's really 3 main tenets that we operate on when it comes to a significant event. And I think about certain examples. Prior to my current role, I'll be starting my 5th year in my current role, but prior to that role, I took care of Chicago and Northern Illinois' electric system for about a 15-year period. And unfortunately, most of us in here with a lot of experience have lived through some significant events. And when you're in Chicago and you hit the -40 wind chill temperatures, it gets pretty serious pretty quick. And I've been involved with Sandy, where I took 1,000 individuals up to New York. And when you see the effects of natural disasters, I think we all remember them, and it changes, how you think about emergency preparedness as you move forward in your careers. But as far as Exelon, the 3 tenets that we use is our first strategy when it comes to natural or significant events is to prevent the event. When it comes to prudent investments in the electric system, when everybody goes home at night and kind of hits that switch on the electricity, that it comes on almost all the time effortlessly, and you kind of take it for granted and don't have to think about it. So our first tenet, prudent investments, never have the outage. And then secondly, our second tenet has to do with when there is an event, how quickly we respond to restore, as an example for me, electric service. And one of the first things that we did coming into the region as Exelon, now Pepco part of Exelon, is we maintain a standard clearance and tagging manual across all of the Exelon companies. For those of you who may not be familiar with Exelon, we run the electric system in Chicago and Northern Illinois, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and here in the nation's capital in the greater Washington area. And what we did in this common clearance and tagging manual is we can bring resources from as far away as Chicago, and when they land on our system here in this area, they basically can go right to work. They're all trained to the same clearance and tagging, same work management systems. They have laptops in their trucks, and they can go right to work. And there's nothing more reinforcing when you're in a big event and you see 200 or 300 bucket trucks coming up over the mountain in order to support you. So we're glad that we have that depth of service. And another item is I serve on the board of you guys are familiar with mutual assistance. These are the national organizations that move electric resources across the country in response to events. And I'm on the board of it's called the SEE, Southeast Electric Exchange, where we get together, review significant events that have impacted the states and how we can learn and be better together. In fact, the most recent events we had in Florida this past year, we had a lot of different things with the Department of Energy around the drones and the use of drones as it pertains to damage assessment and getting the waivers, the FAA waivers, in order to manage and use those. So just overall, some great lessons learned there. So as I reflect on the importance of the Red Cross in facilitating this, I close with these comments that, it's an honor to serve the nation's capital and to be here. In fact, as I think about it, on a sidebar, I was a hardcore. Any Philadelphia Eagles fans in the room? Philadelphia Eagles fans? We have a couple. Now I'm migrating, year 5, I'm migrating to a Redskins fan, but I told my wife, we're never moving to Dallas because I will never become a Dallas Cowboys fan. I always blame the parents for those few Dallas fans in the room. All right, but in closing, on a serious note, today is all about, I mentioned, the third tenet had everything to do about communications and the importance of communications. And I liked how the comments that Doug had initially about, the communications and what we're going to learn here today. So whether it's the relationships we form today here, how you prepare your organizations and what role you each individually play, at the end of the day, those relationships are the foundation for communications. When you have relationships across the board when it comes to the Red Cross and the other groups in here, there's nothing we can't do as a greater Washington area. So once again, glad to be here as a sponsor. I look forward to seeing and saying hello to everybody at the breaks. Thank you guys for attending today, and thank you, Red Cross.